We've all heard of the legendary 6 wives of Henry VIII, but history has hidden the inbreeding secret of one of them. It was so bad that her parents committed legal fraud just to get married. We'll reveal why her bizarre nighttime habits terrified her servants, the shocking truth about the place where she died, and the discovery found inside her that Henry tried to erase from history. When we think of royal inbreeding, the Spanish Habsburgs, like Charles II, usually come to mind. While the wife lived just before that dynasty reached its peak of genetic overlap, she was still significantly inbred by modern standards, and this is something even books about the Tudors rarely mention. Inbreeding was common among royals and was designed to keep power and wealth within the family. From European history to ancient Egypt, this practice was not unique to one culture. People did not understand the science of inbreeding and its consequences for health, but they absolutely understood the pattern. They simply ignored it when power and wealth were on the line. This was the case for the parents of the inbred wife of Henry VIII, and their story is absolutely bizarre. Even for their time, their relationship was considered illegal. Under Catholic canon law at the time, marrying someone so closely related was strictly forbidden without a formal papal dispensation, which was special permission from the Pope. Here is where it gets wild. They did not actually wait for the real permission before getting married. Instead, they forged it. But why did they want to get married so desperately? In the late 1400s, their country did not exist yet. It was a collection of separate, often warring kingdoms. They both realized that together, they could defeat their domestic enemies, unite their kingdoms, and build what would become an empire. But there was a massive issue. They both shared King John I as a great-grandfather, making them second cousins, which is still shocking by modern standards. Pope Paul II refused to give them permission. He did not want to upset the rulers of France and Portugal. So their supporters came up with a plan. With help from the Archbishop of Toledo, they bribed a church official and created a fake papal document. They claimed the document had been written earlier by Pope Pius II before he died. On October 19, 1469, the fake permission was read aloud at their wedding, and the marriage was quickly consummated to make it permanent. The fruit of the union between Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile was Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of Henry VIII. But this was not the only thing Catherine's family did not want anyone to find out about. Their bloodline carried a far more disturbing secret that they tried desperately to bury. A recurring trait so obvious that it turned the world's most powerful dynasty into a source of public mockery. Catherine's family method for burying these secrets was incredibly dark. They didn't just hide the truth, they literally hid the people. In the 1500s, European royalty lived under a microscope, and any defect in a monarch was directly tied to their divine right to rule. If a royal family looked broken or unstable, it invited civil war at home and invasion from abroad. The first victim of this reality was Catherine's grandmother, Isabella of Portugal. After her husband died, Isabella showed signs of something that terrified the royal court. They immediately bundled her up and sent her away to the remote castle of Arevalo. Her daughter, Isabella the Catholic, Catherine's mother, loved her but knew that she posed a political risk. The family essentially put her in a gilded cage, cut off her communication with the outside world, and rarely spoke of her publicly. For 40 years, she was a ghost to the rest of Europe. But Catherine's sister, Joanna of Castile, became the biggest victim of this system. The shame was so intense that her own father and son enacted the ultimate cover-up. Joanna was completely, intensely, and overwhelmingly in love with her husband, Philip the Handsome. In fact, contemporary accounts suggest it was a case of intense attraction from the moment they met. However, this passionate start didn't last long. Philip was a notorious serial cheater. Because Joanna was so deeply in love, his rampant infidelities drove her into states of desperate, blinding jealousy. She would fly into rages and scream at him. In one famous incident, she even attacked one of his permanent mistresses and cut the woman's hair off at the roots. His sudden death in 1506 marked the beginning of Joanna's downfall. Her grief was so overwhelming that she reportedly didn't allow any woman near him and traveled across Spain with his coffin, refusing to bury him for months. Foreigners mocked her as a woman entirely consumed by hysterical lust and grief. But what her father and son did was far crueler. In 1509, her father locked her away in the grim, windowless royal palace of Tordesillas. Her son, Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, was deeply ashamed of her condition and terrified that Spanish rebels would try to rescue her in order to challenge his rule. He gave strict orders to her jailers. No one was allowed to see her, speak to her, or write to her without his explicit permission. She was kept there until she died in 1555, after nearly 5 decades of isolation. This strange pattern can be seen in at least 3 people related to Catherine: her grandmother, who reportedly suffered from hallucinations, her sister, now known as Joanna the Mad, and even Catherine's daughter, Mary I, who is also known for having mental health issues. Modern historians and psychiatrists who study historical cases strongly suspect that a genetic predisposition to mental health issues ran through Catherine's family line. But while this predisposition likely skipped Catherine herself, she had a bigger problem. Many people think she became Henry VIII's wife very easily after Henry's brother died. In reality, the gap between these 2 marriages was far longer and involved far darker events than you were told. From almost marrying someone inappropriate to getting trapped in something that looked like a cult. Catherine of Aragon, before becoming the elegant and dignified Queen of England, faced many scandals and tragedies in her youth. One, especially, completely changed her life for the worse. In 1485, Henry Tudor won the Wars of the Roses at the Battle of Bosworth, crowning himself King Henry VII. But his claim to the throne was incredibly weak, and European royalty viewed him as a lucky rebel who had taken the crown by force. He desperately needed a prestigious foreign marriage for his son, Arthur, to prove that the Tudor dynasty was legitimate. Meanwhile, Spain had just been unified under the Catholic monarchs, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile. They were the most powerful couple in Europe. Henry VII reached out to them with a proposal. Catherine would marry Arthur when they came of age. Spain would pay a massive dowry of 200,000 crowns, and both countries would promise to help each other fight France. But Ferdinand and Isabella were famously ruthless. They refused to send their youngest daughter to England if there was any chance that Henry VII could be overthrown by a rival claimant to the throne. Henry VII's solution was one of the worst things any Tudor monarch ever did. To satisfy the Spanish monarchs, Henry spent the 1490s hunting down anyone with a stronger blood claim to the crown than the Tudors. The biggest obstacle was Edward Plantagenet, the Earl of Warwick. He was a young man who had been locked in the Tower of London for most of his life, simply because he had royal blood. Under pressure from Spain, Henry VII created false treason charges and had the innocent Warwick executed in 1499. Henry VII had achieved his dream. The Tudors were officially tied to the greatest royal house in the world. But when Catherine and Arthur finally met face-to-face at Dogma's Field, it was completely awkward. In September 1501, Catherine finally said goodbye to her family and boarded a ship for England. The journey across the Bay of Biscay was a nightmare. Horrific storms nearly sank her fleet. Then, Catherine and Arthur could not speak each other's languages, and their Latin pronunciations were so different that they could not understand each other. They resorted to dancing together through translators to break the ice. On November 14, 1501, they were married in a spectacular, lavish ceremony at Old St. Paul's Cathedral. Nobody had any idea that within 5 months, something terrible would happen. Arthur died of a mysterious illness, and this is where Catherine's tragic story begins. After the death of her husband, Catherine of Aragon fell under the influence of a dangerous man who made her do things that damaged her reputation. To make matters worse, another tragedy occurred. In 1504, Catherine's powerful mother, Queen Isabella of Spain, died. Suddenly, Catherine was no longer the daughter of a united superpower. She was only the daughter of the King of Aragon. Her political value dropped. King Henry VII, who was notoriously greedy and obsessed with money, decided he did not want to waste his young heir, the future Henry VIII, on a depreciated Spanish princess. He forced Henry to secretly register a formal protest against the betrothal. The shocking part is that Henry VII, who was 30 years older than Catherine, actually considered marrying her himself. He was a widower. She was already in England, and marrying her would mean he could keep her dowry without having to pass it on to his son. The plan was dropped because Catherine's father was disgusted by it, and Catherine refused to marry an old man who treated her badly. Henry VII became the main source of Catherine's suffering during these dark years. While the kings of England and Spain bickered over money, Catherine was left completely abandoned in London. Henry VII refused to give her an allowance, claiming her father should support her. Her father refused to send money, claiming Henry VII was responsible for her. She could not even buy new clothes. She could not pay her servants' wages. Some left her, and those who stayed were literally dressed in rags. At exactly this hopeless moment, a mysterious man saw the perfect opportunity to enter her life and take control. Desperate to get accurate information, Catherine's father, Ferdinand, did something completely unprecedented in 1507. He appointed Catherine as the Spanish ambassador to the English court. This made her the first female ambassador in European history. She actively went to court, negotiated with Henry VII, and aggressively defended Spain's interests. This infuriated Henry VII, who expected her to be easily intimidated. Instead, she proved herself to be a political mastermind, which would later make her an incredibly formidable queen. While Catherine was successful in politics, her private life became a disaster. She fell under the spell of a radical Franciscan friar named Fray Diego Fernandez. He became her confessor, and his influence over her was almost cult-like. Diego isolated Catherine from her remaining loyal advisors. He used Catherine's deep, unshakable Catholic piety as a weapon of control. Because he was her confessor, she believed his voice was the literal channel of God's will. Diego made Catherine do things she would later be deeply ashamed of as Queen of England. Her father had strictly forbidden her from selling the gold and silver plate that made up her remaining Spanish dowry. However, Diego convinced her to ignore her father's commands. He pressured her into selling these precious royal heirlooms so he could buy expensive books and personal luxuries for himself. But the most dangerous impact Diego had on Catherine was that he nearly destroyed her reputation with shocking rumors. That reputation was very important because it helped keep her chance of becoming queen alive. Ambassador Fuensalida was so horrified by the rumors that he wrote a desperate letter to Catherine's father, King Ferdinand, warning him that Diego was scandalous in an extreme manner and that the honor of the Spanish crown was being dragged through the mud because Catherine was completely besotted with him. Because Diego was continually in the palace and amongst the women, ugly rumors began to spread through the English court. People openly gossiped that the relationship between the lonely princess and the fiery friar was not purely spiritual. Even when Henry VII died and King Henry VIII decided to marry Catherine, she still was not free from Diego. As Queen of England, Catherine was safe from isolation and poverty, but marrying Henry VIII was actually the worst thing that could have happened to her. Despite Catherine of Aragon's modern reputation as an elegant queen, she actually had a darker side than many historians have led us to believe. There are no words to describe what she sent to her husband, Henry VIII, during the early years of their marriage, when he was away from England. In 1515, Diego's luck ran out. Henry had him packed up and permanently banished back to Spain, finally freeing Catherine from the friar's decade-long grip. For the first decade, Henry and Catherine's marriage was a massive success, full of love, political partnership, and military triumph. Henry was young, highly athletic, handsome, and completely infatuated with Catherine. She was cultured, intelligent, and shared his love of music, dancing, and hunting. Henry loved showing her off. He would ride in tournaments disguised as a mysterious knight, win the competition, and then gallop over to the royal box, remove his helmet, and reveal himself to his cheering queen. But Catherine had a difficult duty to fulfill. Like every monarch, Henry VIII needed an heir. This was especially urgent for him because the decades-long civil conflict known as the Wars of the Roses was still fresh in England's memory. Henry was terrified of something like that happening again. He desperately needed an heir, but not just any heir. It had to be a male heir, because people at the time believed that only men should rule a kingdom. Catherine believed that her strong love for Henry would easily give him what he wanted. Her devotion to him was so intense that she did something no one would ever have expected of her. Catherine was not just a trophy wife. Henry trusted her completely. In 1513, Henry sailed to France to wage war, leaving Catherine behind as Regent of England, meaning she was running the entire country in his absence. While Henry was away, King James IV of Scotland saw an opportunity and invaded northern England with a massive army. Catherine did not panic. Even though she was heavily pregnant at the time, she personally gathered troops, organized logistics, and gave a fiery speech to the English soldiers, urging them to defend their land. Her army completely crushed the Scots at the Battle of Flodden. King James IV was killed in action. Catherine wanted to send King James's body to Henry in France as a war trophy. Her advisors told her that this was too gruesome, so instead, she sent Henry James's blood-stained coat, jokingly writing that she was sorry she could not send the actual body, but that the English hearts would not suffer it. But despite the political success and romance, their private lives were defined by relentless, heartbreaking tragedy. Catherine had a strange nighttime ritual that worried a lot of people, and one woman would ultimately be responsible for her tragic ending. Catherine spent a decade in a near-constant state of pregnancy, but almost none of her children survived. In 1520, Catherine was 35 years old. Her childbearing years were nearly over, and she had left Henry with only one surviving daughter, the future Queen Mary I. In the 16th century, many people believed that a woman ruling would lead to a bloody civil war. Henry grew desperate. He began to believe his marriage was literally cursed by God. He remembered the old biblical law in Leviticus, which stated that if a man married his brother's widow, they would be childless, or in Henry's mind, left without male children. Everything collapsed when, in 1526, a young, captivating woman named Anne Boleyn had arrived at court. Henry fell madly in love with her, but Anne refused to become his mistress. She demanded to be queen. This sparked the king's great matter, Catherine's greatest fear. In desperation to save her marriage, Catherine did something unusual. She was a member of the secular Franciscan order and strictly observed the canonical hours. She would routinely wake up at midnight and again around 3 a.m., but not just to pray. She rejected luxury in her private devotions. Biographers note that she would frequently kneel on the cold stone floors of her private chapel for hours, refusing cushions or mats as an act of humility and penance. Catherine was under immense emotional and psychological stress during Henry's attempt to divorce her. It is well documented by her ladies-in-waiting and ambassadors that she wept frequently during Mass and personal prayers, pouring her heart out over her precarious situation and the fate of her daughter, Mary. We should definitely take it with a grain of salt, but some records also suggest that she engaged in loud, verbal spiritual warfare, begging for forgiveness and demanding that God banish the demonic influences she believed were overtaking Henry's court. These desperate prayers did not help. Henry launched a massive, years-long legal battle to get the Pope to annul his marriage to Catherine. He expected her to quietly step aside and go to a nunnery. Instead, she fought like a tiger. Henry knew he could never win legally, so he broke the law. He severed England's ties with the Catholic Church, declared himself supreme head of the Church of England, and had his own archbishop annul the marriage in 1533. He then married Anne Boleyn, who was already pregnant. But what happened to Catherine after that was heartbreaking, to say the least. What was found inside Catherine of Aragon after her death would spread centuries of rumors that history lovers still debate today. Henry did not just replace Catherine, he tried to systematically erase her identity and break her spirit. Henry officially stripped Catherine of the title of Queen. In the eyes of the new Church of England, her 24-year marriage to Henry had never legally existed. Instead, the Crown ordered that she be addressed strictly as the Dowager Princess of Wales, a title meant to remind her that she was nothing more than the widow of Henry's older brother, Arthur. To keep her away from the public, who deeply loved Catherine and routinely rioted in her favor, Henry moved her to a succession of increasingly damp, remote, and dilapidated castles in the English countryside. During this time, her budget was slashed. She lived in a state of semi-poverty compared to her previous royal life, and she constantly feared that Henry's agents were going to poison her food. She would only eat meals prepared by her few remaining loyal Spanish servants right in front of her. By late 1535, Catherine's health was failing rapidly. She was suffering from severe chest pains, nausea, and weight loss. The cruelest punishment Henry inflicted on Catherine was separating her from her daughter, Princess Mary. Because Mary fiercely took her mother's side and refused to acknowledge Anne Boleyn as queen, Henry declared both mother and daughter rebels. He banned them from ever seeing each other, writing to each other, or passing messages. When Catherine fell gravely ill, she begged Henry to let Mary visit her or nurse her back to health. Henry refused, suspecting they would plot a Catholic rebellion against him. On January 7, 1536, Catherine died at Kimbolton Castle at the age of 50. Mother and daughter never saw each other face to face again, not even during the funeral. When news of Catherine's death reached the royal court at Greenwich Palace, Henry and Anne made no effort to hide their absolute relief and joy. They wore yellow to celebrate the fact that Anne was now the undisputed Queen of England. At the time, court whispers claimed Anne and Henry had successfully poisoned Catherine. The reason for this rumor was that the embalmer found a black growth attached to Catherine's heart. Modern medical historians, however, have evaluated the descriptions and concluded that Catherine likely died of cancer. Symbolically, history often remembers it as Catherine literally dying of a broken heart. In a cruel irony, Catherine's life ended like her grandmother and sister, imprisoned by the people who were supposed to protect and love her most. But Catherine was not the only tragic queen. 200 years later, her distant niece, Margaret Theresa of Spain, became known as one of the most inbred princesses in history. Her story and strange habits are even more unusual. Watch the next video.